Hi everyone, my name's Adriana Gonzalez and I'll be talking about toxic chemicals in fish. So the peer-reviewed article I chose to read is titled Persistent Organohalogens in Paired Fish Fillet and Eggs, Implications for Fish Consumption Advisories, from the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry. The purpose to the study was to specifically identify concentrations of toxic contaminants present in fish eggs as compared to fish fillets. The reason for this is because fish advisories set by government agencies don't base these advisories on data also pertaining to fish eggs. This is important to include in such an advisory as there are fish consumers who also enjoy the frequent consumption of fish eggs as a delicacy. The fish and eggs studied were those of Lake Ontario, including Chinook salmon, coho salmon, brown trout, and rainbow trout. The chemicals measured within the fish fillets and eggs included polybrominated diphenyl polychlorinated naphthalines, dioxin-like PCBs, and polychlorinated bidenzodioxins, furans. As a conclusion to the study, it was found that wet weight-based concentrations of toxic chemicals in fish eggs were higher than those of fish fillets. Consumers of fish eggs should therefore take note and keep this in mind when managing the consumption of fish eggs in order to avoid the overconsumption of toxic chemicals. So it's stated within the introduction that the information provided by this article should be most useful to public health officials and consumers of fish. The scientific terminology used in the article's methods and discussion sections are written at a level that seem to apply more towards the public health officials' audience. The author of this article is Xianming Zhang. He earned his Bachelor of Science from the College of Environment at Peking University in Beijing. He earned his Master of Science from the Department of Geography, School of the Environment at the University of Toronto. His PhD was earned from the Department of Chemistry, School of the Environment at the University of Toronto. The purpose of this research study was to examine the presence of certain toxic chemicals present in fish eggs and fish fillets, as well as to determine which of the two contained more toxic chemicals. The information presented in this article was of great quality, being that the intention of the research was to measure the amounts of different toxic chemicals within the selected fish and fish eggs. The data presented stayed relevant to that. The information was also presented in a more scientific manner. There were two ways in which the toxic chemicals were measured from the fish fillets and fish eggs. One way was by weight-based concentrations. The other way was by lipid weight normalized concentrations. The data was presented using bar graphs and plots and tables. The use of the two measuring methods helped to determine effectiveness between the two. One way in which I found the article to be biased is in its exclusion of fish skin in its analysis. The exclusion of this data doesn't present all aspects of fish consumption to the audience. In the introduction, it is recognized that some people prefer to eat the skin of the fish. With this in mind, the research should include the skin along with the fillet and eggs of the fish in the analysis of toxic chemicals, so that the data includes all possible ways in which fish can be consumed. From this article, I did learn important and new information that is useful for my future profession. I'm aware that there are many people who enjoy the consumption of fish. For this reason, it is important that I am aware of the benefits as well as the hazards involved with the consumption of fish. Being aware of the toxicity amounts some fish parts and fish eggs contain is important when assisting clients with their meal planning. From this article, I also learned important and new information that applies to my personal life. I consider myself to be a pescatarian since I don't eat meat, only seafood. I especially prefer to eat salmon often. Learning about the concentrations of certain toxic chemicals within the studied salmon and other fish species really opened my eyes to be more cautious in the amounts of fish that I consume. The next article I chose to read about was titled Fish Exposed to Wastewater Absorb Many Medication Meant for People. This was from the U.S. News and World Report. And this discusses the concern of toxic chemicals present within the fish. More specifically, it discusses the presence of pharmaceuticals found in fish. it is being found that thousands of different pharmaceuticals are passing through our water treatment plants and heading straight to our rivers and oceans. There are an array of popular human drugs and products being found within the blood of tested fish. Examples of the pharmaceuticals and human products being found are metformin, albuterol, Prozac, testosterone, diphenhydramine, antibiotics, antidepressants, DEET, insecticides, pesticides, caffeine, amphetamine, phthalates from personal care products, plastic additives, and synthetic hormones. It is claimed that the amounts found to be present are far from the amounts necessary to treat or have any significant effect on humans. The more concerning issue is the increased exposure of antibiotics to the microorganisms in the waters they're being disposed in. These microorganisms could develop antibiotic resistance, and then if exposed to humans via consumption, for example, can impose hazard to humans by causing the same effect if they were to suffer some type of bacterial infection. Another concern is that although the pharmaceuticals don't appear to be severely affecting humans, sea life is most at risk and showing signs of being affected. There have been cases of male fish, such as smallmouth bass, showing female characteristics, which is believed to be caused by the exposure of these fish to synthetic estrogen hormones. The issue of pharmaceuticals contaminating our waters the issue of pharmaceuticals contaminating our rivers and oceans and sea life is a complicated one, as it is really hard to contain the spread once disposed in the waters. Therefore, there haven't been consistent correlations between the concentrations of toxic chemicals within fish and their geographical location due to their ease of spread in waters. The spread and contamination prevention will continue to be demanded from wastewater companies and pressuring representatives for legislation. The target audience of this article are basically just consumers of fish, and the article is written at a level that can easily be understood by the average fish consumer. The author of this article is Lisa Esposito. She is employed as a staff writer / patient advice reporter for U.S. News. She earned her bachelor's degree from the University of Maryland School of Nursing, and she earned her master's degree at Georgetown University in journalism. Her affiliation is with the Association of Healthcare Journalists, where she's a member. The author's intent in writing this article was to provide fish consumers some raw facts about the fish they are consuming. The author also presents ways in which humans can take action into their own hands to prevent the unnecessary spread and contamination of pharmaceuticals in the oceans and in fish. The information presented was indeed valuable. It is more impactful to know exactly what types of medications are floating in rivers and ocean waters. It is even more impactful to know they are within the fish that we may be consuming. The information can be appalling to a fish consumer, but might also spark some awareness in them to make decisions on how much fish to consume, as well as to make demands of those who are able to limit this contamination from continuing at high rates. The information was presented in a way that was understandable to most. This is important when conveying an important message such as this to the general public. One way in which the article might present a bias is in its encouragement to hold wastewater companies accountable and to pressure local representatives for the purpose of encouraging legislation on the matter. It encourages consumers to speak up on the matter. This could be biased in that it is putting fear into consumers with these facts about the toxic chemicals in fish, and therefore making them more inclined to take action in these particular ways. And of course, I did learn important and new information useful for my professional life. It is important to be aware of the different pharmaceuticals that are known to be lurking in fish, as some individuals may be highly sensitive to this. If a future client were to consume a lot of fish and have this issue, then it's important that they're aware of this information so that they might, want to limit their consumption for their protection. And I learned important and new information that is useful for my personal life. I was not aware of the specific pharmaceuticals known to be found in fish, And I was also not aware that there is no consistent correlation between the concentrations of pharmaceuticals present in fish and their geographic location. Knowing that there's really no way to confirm that fish from one particular geographic location are less contaminated from another makes me want to limit my consumption of fish a bit, just to avoid over consuming such contaminants. And so that concludes my presentation, and this was a picture that I thought goes really well with my topic, and it's actually sad to see, but hopefully we can put a stop to this issue. Thank you.